All right, let's talk about a big one, anarchism. It's a word that probably brings all sorts of images to your mind, right? But what if I told you the real story is way more interesting and a lot less chaotic than the stereotype? Okay, let's get into it. You've definitely seen this symbol before, the circled A. It might be spray painted on a wall or on a patch on someone's jacket. It's the banner of anarchism. And for most of us, when we see it, our brain immediately jumps to some pretty traumatic conclusions. So does this look familiar? When you think anarchy, do you think of pure chaos, total disorder, a world with no rules where it's every person for themselves? Yeah, that's the popular image. But here's the twist. For actual anarchists, that's the complete opposite of what they're aiming for. Check out this quote from Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, one of the very first people to proudly call himself an anarchist. Anarchy is order, government is civil war. Whoa, that flips the whole script, doesn't it? He's saying that a world without government is the natural state of order, and it's actually governments that cause all the conflict. How in the world does that work? To really wrap our heads around this, we have to start with the word itself. We need to clear the air and understand what anarchists actually mean when they say anarchy. So the word anarchy itself comes from ancient Greek, and it's super simple. It just means without rulers or without authority. Notice it doesn't say without rules or without order. In fact, anarchists are pretty clear that the society they want to build would be very ordered, just in a different way. The idea is that order would come from the ground up, naturally, instead of being forced on people from the top down. Okay, but that raises a huge question, right? If you don't have a state or police or laws to enforce order, where does it come from? Well, for anarchists, the answer lies in a pretty optimistic view of you, me, and everyone else. At its core, anarchism makes this huge bet on humanity. It basically says that, deep down, we aren't selfish, greedy, or aggressive creatures. Instead, it argues that when you leave people to their own devices, our natural instinct is to cooperate and get along. So here's the thinking. Anarchists believe we are fundamentally social and rational beings. We're built for solidarity and what they call mutual aid. Helping each other out because it's the right thing to do and because we all benefit in the end. So, if we see greed and violence in the world, it's not because people are just born bad. The anarchist argument is that systems of power, especially the state, are what corrupt us. And this idea is the launchpad for the entire anarchist worldview. If people are naturally good and cooperative, then the real problem in society has to be something else. And for them, that something else is the state. So let's follow the logic here. If we're all capable of managing our own affairs together, then the state isn't just unnecessary, it's actually the main thing holding us back from reaching our true potential. But why? What's so bad about it? Their critique really boils down to three big things. First, the state is commanding. It makes you obey its laws, period, whether you think they're right or not, which crushes individual freedom. Second, it's controlling. It tries to manage every little aspect of our lives, which kills our natural creativity. And maybe most important of all, it's corrupting. Giving a few people that much power over everyone else, it's a recipe for disaster that poisons both the people in charge and the people they rule over. Okay, so the mission is clear. Create a society without a state, built on natural human cooperation. Sounds simple, right? Well, not so fast. Because as soon as you get everyone to agree on that first part, a massive debate breaks out about what should happen next. Yeah, it turns out that anarchism isn't just one big happy family. It's actually a really diverse philosophy with some deep, fundamental disagreements about how a truly free society should work. Generally, you can think of it as two major camps, two different paths that fork off from that main road. On one side, you have the collectivist anarchists, and on the other, you have the individualist anarchists. And their visions for the future could not be more different. So let's break down the rivalry. In one corner, you've got the collectivists. For them, it's all about community, solidarity, and working together. They believe we're social creatures first and foremost, so things like land and factories should be owned by everyone in common. Then, in the other corner, you have the individualists. They put the individual on a pedestal. For them, personal freedom and autonomy are everything. They argue that any authority, even a community, can be a threat to liberty, and they tend to support things like individual possession and free market. Now, to make this all a bit less abstract, let's actually put some faces to these ideas and look at a few of the key thinkers who really shaped these competing visions of a world without rulers. We're back with Proudhon.
And he's a super interesting guy because he sort of has a foot in both camps. He's famous for saying property is theft. But what he meant was specific. He was talking about landlords or factory owners who make money off of other people's work. He made a big distinction between that and possession. He was all for a worker's right to own their own house, their own tools, and whatever they produce.
And that leads to his big idea, mutualism. Just picture a world full of independent workers and co-ops, all trading goods and services with each other fairly based on how much labor it took to make them. The whole thing would be fueled by a people's bank that gives out loans with zero interest. It's kind of like a free market, but totally stripped of any capitalist exploitation or government meddling. Okay, now let's go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. If Proudhon was trying to find a balance, our next thinker, Max Stirner, wanted to smash the scales completely. Stirner's whole philosophy is called egoism, and it is every bit as intense as it sounds. For him, the only thing that's truly real is your own individual self, your ego. Everything else, the state, society, God, even abstract ideas like morality or humanity, he called them spooks, just ghosts in your head designed to control you. The only right thing to do, in his view, is whatever you want, whatever serves your own unique self. And finally, we have to talk about Emma Goldman, an absolute force of nature in the anarchist movement. She took these ideas and expanded on them, arguing that we need to be free from all forms of control, not just the state, but also the church, the patriarchy, and militarism. She thought things like voting were just a distraction. For Goldman, real change never comes from the top down. It always has to come from ordinary people taking direct action to change their own lives.
Phew. Okay, we've gone from the myth of chaos all the way through the deep debates inside anarchism itself. So after all that, what's the one big thing you should walk away with?
At the end of the day, this is what it's all about. Despite all their internal disagreements, every single anarchist shares this one fundamental goal. It was never about creating chaos. It's a philosophy about how to achieve true human freedom by getting rid of what they see as the two biggest cages, political power and economic exploitation. And that really leaves us with a final thought. At its very heart, anarchism is a challenge to question every authority you're told to obey. So it's worth asking yourself, what are the rules, the invisible structures that govern your own life? And why are they even there in the first place?